Unfortunately, this title isn't clickbait. Yes, in the past year of being a full-time game developer, including releasing a game, building this YouTube channel up to over 25,000 subscribers, for which I'm very grateful, I have made a total of $0. And in this video, I just want to talk a bit more about running a studio moderately successfully, because of course there's always some more nuance, and talk a bit more about my year one review basically of having quit my job to become a full-time game dev and YouTuber. And of course, that doesn't mean that our studio in general hasn't earned anything. It's just that I haven't been able to pay myself out because we've just not had that much room. I'll dive into those numbers in a bit. But if you have no clue or you don't really watch this that much, I quit my job last year to become a full-time game developer. The year before that, I was already making games, but I was doing it on the side whilst also combining it with my job as a data center architect. Then last year, I didn't really like that job anymore because I was being put more and more into a sales position. And I figured, okay, now is the time to do something else. And I had a runway and I was like, let's go all in on this YouTube and game dev thing and let's see where it goes from there. Back then, we hadn't released a game yet. Forge Industry was still multiple months away from launch and this YouTube channel had about 800 subscribers or so. So definitely in the past year, a lot of stuff has happened. A little bit of maybe further background about our studio is we're a studio that started with 4 people. Now we moved down to 3 because one of our 4 founding members wasn't really the biggest fan of game dev and he kind of took a step back. Now we have 2 more interns who've joined us for a few months to work on art for our next game, Guild Architect. But generally we've been pretty small. But we also haven't had any external funding. We're completely bootstrapped. We have no incubators, we have no publishers, and we've got denied government grants multiple times at this point. So this entire studio, everything you see here has been done just by my savings and the savings of the rest of the team, putting them in here. This video should hopefully serve a bit as a reminder that that is not always the smartest thing to do. Also, I'm not the only person here at Byte Me who quit their main job because there were like issues with it to become full-time game developers. I also have William, who quit about a month after me, and he's been a bit better off. He's been able to be paid, but still we are nowhere near comfortable. So let's talk a bit about those numbers. Over the past year of being a full-time game developer, we earned a total of 13,500-ish euros. I'll put up a graph of some of our earnings as well, and it comes from a variety of sources. We made a game, Forge Industry, which was a resource automation and management game. We launched it at about 2,000 wishlists. We made plenty of videos about it on how the launch wasn't really what we were hoping for. We got a bit of recovery through things like the sales and festivals, but still we're not at $10,000 gross yet, which means that we've actually earned less than $5,000 net or 5,000 euros net after taxes, after the 30% Steam cut, and that is not enough to like sustain yourself at all. Then some other sources of income is of course this YouTube channel. It has grown a lot over the past year, which really I think is the big success of our studio. Not the games, but more just the YouTube. We've really grown more than 25,000 subscribers, which thank you so much everyone who subscribed and who's been with us along the way. And that has also allowed us to do some things like sponsorships, which do really help us a lot. Like sponsorships give us between 250 and 1,000 euros, which gives us a lot of breathing room from like a single video that I was probably going to be making anyways. So I know they're not always the most popular with you guys, but there are points where we just need to do them to keep the lights on. And then one of the last big income revenue streams is our Patreon, of course. So if you're someone who likes the stuff we put out on YouTube and you want 6 bonus videos a month and maybe some other stuff as well, there's a Patreon down below. I really like our Patrons. I think, to be honest, like this is not a plug to sell the Patreon, but if we did not have that, this YouTube channel would have just stopped at some point because it didn't make sense to continue, because we wouldn't be having a stable enough income and we wouldn't be having just enough income in general. Now, 13,500 euros. If you cut down on your costs a lot, you can probably live with that, right? If you go and move to like Bali or whatever, and yeah, not really. There's a lot of stuff that we need to pay for here in the studio as well. And that's things like, for example, when we get art commissioned, when we get our Steam page credits, there's plenty of costs here. And an important one is, even though I'm not being paid, there's the other full-time guy, William. He's somewhat getting paid. He's being paid like the minimum wage we can give him once every 2 months, just because he doesn't have the same level of runway as I do. And I feel like I would rather take the money and reinvest it in the company instead of paying myself out, because I have my own runway still. So even at the end of the day, if I went and I lived in Thailand or in Bali or another very cheap country, it wouldn't be enough to sustain ourselves. And I think that's a good point to actually talk a bit more about my runway, because that's a question I get often, and especially now if you're like you're not getting paid. How are you sustaining this? Before this, I was earning about 100,000 euros a year. I had a pretty good job. And I live very frugally, which means I can save up a lot. And I had originally planned for about a year of runway from when I quit my job. Now, turns out I do live pretty calmly. So I have a burn rate of about 1,600 euros a month, and I have, I would say, at most another year worth of runway before I really get into trouble. Although I would prefer, honestly, even the next half year, I could kind of slow down how fast I'm burning through stuff, because otherwise, yeah, it's kind of dumb. But that 6 months that I'm talking about, that means a problem, because we're working on our next game now, Guild Architect, which is a strategy management game where you manage a fantasy adventure guild and you have to make quests and correctly guess how difficult they are and then send off parties to go and complete those quests. But that game, we currently have a release date kind of idea of November, which means that after the Steam period of having to wait, we will not be getting any money from that game up until January 2025. Even if it's a wildly successful game, that is not long enough to sustain our studio right now. And that means that I have to look at other ways to keep the company alive. Even if I don't pay out myself, the studio still has a bunch of expenses that need to be paid. And that is why you've seen plenty of these comments at this point of oh, why do you listen to this guy? He only does YouTube. That's because there's simply more money in YouTube right now than in game dev. And I also want you to consider that I'm just one person. This YouTube channel is only done by me. We still have 4 other people right now, so Thomas, William, and our 2 interns, working purely on the game. It's really something where I'm look, you guys don't worry about the money. I'll worry about the money and keeping the studio afloat. You guys just focus on making great games and we'll see where it goes from there. Honestly, for the next few months, I don't see myself working on games directly that much, because honestly, I'm also the worst game dev of our studio, in terms of actual programming, in terms of actual game design, game art, whatever. So it doesn't make sense for me to spend a lot of time and effort there when I could be spending it here, where every video I upload is 15 euros. Doesn't sound much. It isn't that much maybe, but it's still something that I can control somewhat. The more videos, the more income, which means more growth, which means maybe more wish lists down the line. Hopefully it will all pay off in the end. But I just want to make this video to showcase that, hey, don't quit your job right now if you're considering going into full-time game dev. We also started at probably one of the worst possible moments. I think we started right before the big indie game recession, basically, is what I'm gonna call it. And we already had some momentum before I actually quit my job last year. Looking back, it wasn't that much, but still, we had that few hundred subscribers. We had a few hundred wish lists already. That was already a good indication sign that, hey, we're getting somewhere. If you're at absolutely 0 right now and you're I'm gonna quit my job and pursue games, don't do it, please. It's dumb. It really is. There's better periods in time. Publishing is really hard right now. Government grants can be really tricky right now. There's simply not that much money in game dev right now, which means that I have to think about ways to earn money outside of game dev, but still kind of related to it. And for those who aren't actually no, I really want to quit my job. I know titles like this, oh, I quit my job to become a full-time game dev, and Devlog Zero and whatnot, can be very clicky and generally do perform quite well. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not going to be sleeping well for next year if you do this. And that is something that's, I'm young, I'm very risk tolerant still. I'm 23 years old at this point. I can survive through this. Although I've been burnt out for the past half year, that's just part of what it comes through. I still have a lot of younger energy. I know our audience in general is a bit older already, so you may not have that same freedom. Then I would just suggest sticking to game dev as a hobby. Game dev, or doing it part-time, it's still really fun. Sure, you'll be slower in your development cycles, but you will be able to sleep at night. So that's really all I wanted to say. I just wanted to make this as an intermediary update that, hey, I'm still here. It's not going perfect, but it's not going horrible as well. I think we've had plenty of wins as well. I want to quickly just say that as well. We did still release a game. There are plenty of studios who haven't done that. We've been able to get featured on howtomarketagame.com, maybe because our game didn't succeed that well, but still, those are wins. We've made this YouTube channel over 25,000 subscribers. Back when I was a wee lad, 16, I was making Battlefield 4 videos, thinking oh, one day I'm gonna be a YouTuber, but I had 15 subscribers back then. So this does feel really nice and rewarding to me still. And this is way more fun, I'll tell you that, even though I can't sleep, even though I have so many other struggles. I prefer this much more than working with my 50-year-old colleagues and selling stuff to Indian CTOs, who don't care about the product, who don't care about me, and just complain about everything basically. And then me being put on quotas, I did not like that. I really like what I'm doing here. It's just really hard to do as well. But honestly, looking back, I am not regretting having quit, because I also had a job that kind of pushed me away from wanting to do it anyway. So I hope this gave you a bit more of an update. If you have any questions, you know, of course, probably you're gonna have them. Leave them in the comments down below. I'll try extra hard on this one to respond to as many people as possible. I try to respond to a bunch of you. It's not always possible. I think this one especially, you may have questions, or you may be just thinking that I'm absolutely stupid and I should just quit game development because the games we make are horrible. I see those comments as well. I just don't respond to them. But whatever you want to say, leave it in the comments down below. It boosts engagement. If you want to know more about like game development, we upload 2 videos every week where we just talk about things that we've learned along the way, where we showcase you, okay, this is what has been going on with our studio, for example. So I think there's a lot of value in it. Maybe not things that I can teach you exactly, but definitely a lot of things as well that is like, don't make the same mistakes that we did. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!